special guest. You know his voice, and you may have seen him before as well. We have Carl Tuttle from the Independent Characters podcast. How's it going, Carl?
Excellent. Thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it. I feel honored to be asked back.
It's a pleasure talking to you always, and the stuff that you do, it fascinates me. I love what you do for the community. I believe is needed, and it's perfect. Podcast.
Thanks.
I listen to podcasts all the time, and it got me inspired to do many things. One of which is listening to Black Library books, which your podcast helped me to do that.
Thanks.
And so, just so everyone knows, if you want to check out Carl's stuff, independentcharacters.com. Links in this post, you'll see it. And so check it out. If you haven't heard of him already, he is one of the largest, if not the largest. I don't know the numbers. I just know that you have a massive podcast for 40K specifically.
We've done quite well. We've done quite well for ourselves. I don't know where I stand against other people now, but it's exceeded any expectations I ever had. And we have just a great community. Honestly, if it were a community of 50 people that were all like as in tune as this community is, I'd be happy with 50 people. But it's considerably larger than that. So
yeah, but fantastic. So okay, so talking about some stuff, because it's been a while since I talked to you, maybe 6 months or so ago.
Oh, maybe three or four. I think.
Is it
You're a
three or
busy
four?
guy. You're a busy guy. You do. I see the interviews come up all the time, so I know it probably seems like 6 months. It's probably because you've done
It seems like a while.
interviews since we talked. Yeah.
It has been a while, and I got a 5-second memory, so I'm not gonna. So questions then, in terms
Sure.
of the game, because I know that the way in which you and your circle of friends approach the game is unique and different, and very much my style, which is you look at it for the fun factor, what inspires you, what do you like to play with, and so for the ninth edition stuff. I don't think I've actually talked to you about the new ninth edition stuff or the new base Marines and Necrons and stuff. So first and foremost, where are you at with the new stuff that's coming out?
I mean, obviously, COVID has had an impact on some of our play time. So I haven't played nearly as much as I would like to. My buddy Doug and I started our Crusade lists and played a game of Crusade. I love the way ninth edition is playing. Again, I'm probably not the guy that's going to find all the cracks and crevices in rules and exploit them, but I am very, very excited about the Crusade system in particular. It does put some rules around your narrative pieces of it a bit. And then sometimes they feel initially a little constraining, but I actually like some of that. I like the fact that I have a huge Sisters of Battle army that I'm starting to assemble.
Nice.
And as usual, I go out and buy everything for it. And then I'm like, oh my God, look at all these boxes and all these sprues. What have I done to myself? And as I went through and began assembling stuff, I was like, you know what? Stop what I'm doing. I should focus on just a Crusade list and just build to that list and then grow from there. Even though I have all this stuff already, like it can be such a daunting project when you have a huge amount of stuff. Like, how am I going to get all this done? But if I can break it off into bite-sized chunks and having a 50 power level list, I said power level. Having a 50 power level list that I can then start as my core list and then build up and paint as I go really interests me. Interests me a lot.
And I think it's actually very wise of GW to create the system because it gets new people into the hobby. It's not overly daunting. They can start with a start collecting box. I think it's actually done by design that way. Because it's pretty close to 25 power ish for those boxes, maybe a little give or take. And then you add on to those with the extra boxes. And I love that you started talking about Crusade because literally tomorrow, the first episode of the Crusade campaign that I just finished with with Skari, where I was playing orcs, he was playing Yanari, and so I just had gotten off of a Crusade campaign, and it's my favorite thing.
How much did your force grow over the course of that campaign? Like, did you start at 50?
Yes. Okay, so I started with 50. And first few games, we used 25 and then 35 power and so forth. But it eventually grew to 70. 70, because we spent the requisition points to grow it a little bit by little bit,
Yeah.
5 at a time. One time it was a jump in 10 power just because there was a certain unit I wanted to bring in.
Gotcha.
There was a battle wagon, I think it was.
Yeah.
Actually, no, it was Storm Boys because I wanted to bring 10 Storm Boys, and it was more than 5 power for that. And it got me playing a different army too, which was cool because I'm always playing Chaos or Blood Angels, but playing the Orcs, I've always told myself if I'm going to play Xenos, Orcs is going to be the
Orcs.
army. Yeah, 100%. And
yeah, a friend of mine, one of my guest hosts, Jody, is he's just moved again, and he's like, I have all these board games, I have all these armies, I don't play some. I'm going to pare some of this stuff down. And he's talking about selling his Orcs. And I was like, oh, are you? And I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, I already have armies I don't play. So I'm kind of backing off. But the Orcs have an appeal to me that I could see why you would find them in particular interesting to play.
Yes. Yeah.
For sure.
And the other thing, too, that I noted was, I mean, we created our own narrative, right? Which was just, there's this webway gate. And the Ynnari coming through because they are in search of their they have their own narrative in general, which is they're searching for forget what it is.
Yeah, they're soul stones.
Something like that. Yes. Scaria knows the exact name, but they were searching for something. They came out of the webway gate, and wouldn't you know, this planet that was once theirs is now infested with orcs.
Orc infested.
Right, and so orcs are like, oh.
When you don't tend to your garden. Right,
there you go.
It's gonna grow out of control,
like the moss that they are. Yeah,
that's right.
It's perfect, right? So they're like, okay, who are these guys? Who are these? And so the orcs, they get curious, and then they go over and they see if they want to fight just for fun. Hey, let's fight because we're orcs and we like to fight. And the Ynnari are like, no, okay, this is bad. We want this, and so that's kind of where it started. And then the missions are so good because we actually tied the missions in to the narrative. And sometimes we'd roll randomly to see which mission we'd use, and then we would just tailor the mission or tailor the narrative to the mission to make it make sense. Yeah.
My first Crusade game against my buddy Doug was it's not Doug Johnson that we both know. It's
another Doug.
Doug Neal. My first game against him, I ended up losing because I just took my eye off the objectives, and it was one of those things where we were trying to, I don't remember the exact mission, but there were 6 objectives on the table, and you would hold them at the end of your turn and you'd get points. And in a idiot move, I pulled guys off of an objective I would have scored, thinking I could knock him off an objective, which I didn't even need to do. I should have just stayed on the objective. I'd have been fine.
Yeah.
But I got caught up in the bloodlust,
Yeah. Oh, I totally get that.
That's always my failing part.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, no, I'm totally the same way. And there's a lot of, I want to call it restraint. You got to especially in 9th edition in general with the objectives and the missions, right? There's many times I just want to rush forward and kill stuff in close combat. That's the best thing.
That's the part I enjoy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's also possibly why I don't care about winning and losing so much,
right?
Because as long as I got in there and got to kill a bunch of stuff, I'm having a good time. I think the games that frustrate me the most are the ones where it's like you don't accomplish anything, like you're not killing anything, and then I'm like, that didn't feel like that was fun. Whether win or lose, I can lose a game like I did in this last one and still feel like I killed a lot of your stuff. Yeah, so, I didn't win the objectives. I should have focused on those, but we had a good time, so that was what really mattered.
Yeah. In fact, I have the exact same philosophy when it comes to playing. If I'm losing objective-wise, in my mind, I'm like, okay, as long as Karn kills something, or 2 or 3, then there you go, right?
I used to be like that when I played World Eaters. I used to, as long as I can throw Karn at that time at a Land Raider or something, because that was all when he would... they had monstrous creatures, and monstrous creatures did more damage, and so he could tear open vehicles like nobody's business back in the day. That's when he was fun to unleash.
I propose that they make a special World Eaters primary / secondary objective where if they kill stuff, then they get victory points for killing stuff. Just straight up kill points.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did really like the asymmetrical objectives that you could have. Like we had secret objectives and that kind of thing, and I found that to be really really nice inclusion in the narrative pieces that we were working with. As you know, I play Thousand Suns primarily, so it
Hmm.
was like, um, and he was playing guard in this particular game. So of course, I don't want to. He's going to pick. If I kill a psyker,
Yeah.
you know, that's a yeah. I'm like, why would you not pick that as an objective in this particular case?
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
As he looks over at my group, he says, "Which of these units are all are psychers?" And I said, "Everything but these guys." That's it.
That's
Everything
it.
else is a psyker.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Oh yeah, you taking that? You taking that one, huh?
Yeah. It's that I. It's funny because I actually I mean I'm really enjoying in general. I'm enjoying Ninth Edition a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I like the secondaries. I like the idea of them because it makes it so no matter what army you bring, you
Yeah,
still have a there's some thought that goes into how can I get some more points. It's not just okay, it's impossible for me to win because you're just going to shoot me off the table type deal, right? It's
yes,
like okay,
yeah.
there's some thought that goes into that, which is neat. Oh, you got vehicles? All right, bring it down. All right, that's what I'm going to do.
The other interesting thing about the narrative missions is I know almost all of them are attacker defender. You determine who the attacker is, you determine who the defender is, and then you have different setups based on those kinds of things. Whereas, your typical tournament mission doesn't rely on attacker defender. It's just two forces who goes first,
Yes.
and then you go. So they really did a lot of work on the missions, and I can tell. And what was interesting is back when I was a playtester for this, I remember Robin Crudis, who kind of spearheads that whole thing, sent us an email, and it was and I remember it distinctly was an email that was like, "What is your favorite mission, and what is your favorite type of mission, and why?" And I wrote this huge document that was like, I like this mission from this book, and this mission from this seventh ed book, and this one from this fifth ed, and here's why I like this, and this is the kind of thing I look for in missions. And I think what they were getting at was at that point, the Crusade pieces, and how do we make these missions fun, while being fair,
Yeah.
and so I felt of all the feedback I gave on various codexes and uh, books that came out, that was a piece of feedback that I was like more than happy to spend a lot of time writing a huge document to send back to them, and why I thought these were great missions and options.
So that must have been when you read Crusade when it came out. That must have been like just a big
I did
validation.
not. I didn't. Oh yeah, yeah. After post the fact. Now I don't know if any of my specific notes made it into that, but seeing Crusade as a whole, I was like, this is exactly what I've been wanting
Yeah.
for a long time, and it really, I really love the fact that they pay as much attention to that, if not a little more, than they do to just basic playing, right, of the game.
Right.
So yeah, I don't. Again, I don't know. I don't know that the document I wrote had a tremendous amount of influence or did not. I do know I felt really good about writing it and being asked, what do you think? And I could articulate very well, like, here's what I like about these missions and why I think they're interesting.
Yeah. I I think because like with AOS they have Path of Glory, and
Yeah,
many years ago they had Path of Glory for
yeah,
40K, but they didn't
yeah,
expand it in the same way that they did for AOS. They didn't put it
right.
make it every single army could do it. And I think Crusade really is the equivalent. It's got to be because it's every army can
Yeah,
participate. They're really focusing on it. They make it so you can get into the game easily, which is the idea behind Path to Glory. Uh, and it's different because uh, there's that internal balancing where if you have more Crusade points than your opponent, then your opponent
yeah,
gets extra command points in the game. I like that because then the player who has less command points, they don't feel like they get an advantage in the game, right? So it's not like
yeah,
they feel like, oh man, I'm going to go up against a more experienced army. It's like, okay, cool,
yeah,
I got a
yeah,
whole
yeah.
bunch more. And so that played a big factor in our campaign that we did. It's like, I won't say who had what because I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, don't spoil it.
But it was awesome though. All I'll know is that like that played a big part.
Is he up in your area?
Yeah, he's a couple hours away. He lives.
Oh, I didn't realize. Yeah,
he came into the studio.
I'm supposed to come over there, but I don't want to get on a plane right now. I'll be honest.
Whenever the border opens,
someday. Yeah, they will. First off, they won't let me in. Second off, probably rightfully so. I it's probably personal actually. Now that I think about it.
I guess you could always get on a, rowboat and just go up the West Coast or something.
Slip across the border.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that now that you said it's coming out. So I really enjoy a spread of missions. I still keep like the old I'm trying to think of what the missions were called in 7th. They put out a couple books that were just missions, and you have 3 missions for each faction. Altar of War.
Altar of War, yeah. Or Echoes of War, Altar of War.
I still keep those, right? Because with a very little adjustment, you can make that a usable mission in any edition.
100%.
It's totally irrelevant. Yeah. And the more material you have to draw from, especially for narrative pieces, the better, right?
And when you say material, do you mean like mechanics for missions, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so I still use those books. Like those ones are still on my shelf, where the rest of like my 6th and 7th ed stuff is all packed up or tossed.
Right.
Those are books that I think are invaluable.
Yeah, I agree, and it's funny you should say that because I've kept a lot of the stuff from the previous editions for that exact reason. Yeah, because it's one thing to make up stuff based on previous experience, but it's another to alter something that already exists and to make it fit.
Super easier, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Much easier to do.
Yeah.
A lot less thinking involved.
Yeah. And then you can put thoughts into, okay, so now that I have this, how can I like build the table? How can I make the terrain in such a way where
Sure. Back in the day, there was a Warhammer Fantasy supplement that came out called Border Skirmishes, I think. And I bought the PDF through like the Apple Store, and it was interesting because it was a way of tying 3 missions together that were these like border skirmishes. This is the old world, so it was along kind of borders and stuff. And you would have kind of rules for how you would move from mission to mission, and that was something we had always talked about maybe taking and making a 40K version of. But now I kind of feel like it's almost not really necessary anymore.
Are you talking about like the hexagonal Mighty Empire tile?
No.
Something different. Okay.
Yeah, it was a supplement that came out, and I want to say it was really called Skirmish or Border Skirmish or something like that. I'll send it over to you later, and I don't think it's even in print anymore, but because you bought it digitally, if I bought it through like the Apple App Store, like I still have it.
Oh yeah.
But it was really about tying 3 games together into, okay, player A wins game 1, so player B gets X in game 2, and it was really kind of a cool little system they had developed, and they never really expanded on it much. But I love that kind of stuff. No, you're talking about Mighty Empires, the hexes, and then the planetary empires was
that's what it was, yeah.
40K one.
40K.
And I actually have like 3 sets of each of those. I got like a garage sale.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, at some point, I'd love to use those for something. It's actually a shame they stopped doing that system. That was a really great, like plastic system for that kind of thing.
Yeah. Garage sale. It's funny because one time my mother-in-law, this is like 13 years ago, she bought some Warhammer models, 40K model, chaos characters.
Yeah.
Independent characters at the time, right?
Yeah.
And she bought it for $5 because the person didn't know what they were selling, and they were all like unpainted, and we're talking. How much are the characters? They're like $15-$20 each, right?
Yeah, probably back then. Yeah, now they're $25-$30.
Now they're more, right? And it was a whole like tackle box full of them, and not just that, but like Chaos Space Marines too. And I'm like, oh my goodness, totally. And it's funny. She brought it in. She's like, Dave, I got these from a garage sale. Do you think you could use them? Like, it's my specific army. It's my army, right?
Yeah.
And all this stuff. Like, yeah, I could definitely use this stuff. Oh my goodness! Wow, hit the jackpot there.
It doesn't get any better than that.
It doesn't.
I have yet to come across that kind of find at a garage sale. But we have here, well, at least we had up until we've all kind of sequestered ourselves was local game stores would do like a flea market, and so you could come in and sell stuff at the game store. And so for a lot of time, like I go in there looking for terrain, but people are unloading all kinds of stuff usually at that kind of, and you can get some good deals. And of course, some people want too much for a certain thing, but
yeah.
But I love that kind of thing where you can kind of haggle over prices and talk about it, and I don't really need this, but if the price were right, I would grab it. Love that stuff.
So just for a sec, just going back to Crusade, have you played a Crusade campaign yet or no?
We just started one, our first game.
Oh, really? Okay, so like within the week, like you just
2 weeks ago.
A couple weeks, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like one mission. You've done one game so far.
One mission so far.
Okay, cool.
So, and part of that was probably my third game of 9th edition, to be honest with you.
Oh, wow.
Again, we're pretty isolated at the moment. We have a bubble of people that we do socialize with, and we kind of keep it to within that bubble.
Yeah.
But we have guys that one particular member of our group, like this is kind of his specialty, like this kind of disease stuff, and so he's super reluctant to be involved in anything. We have people who've had coworkers pass away, and so they're super reluctant to get involved. So I get it. You be safe, right? And hopefully we come out of this soon and I get to play a lot more than I have. But so I've been kind of buckling down and just assembling models and kind of thinking about Crusade and how do I want to grow this Sisters force and that kind of thing.
So talk about your Sisters for a second there. You said you bought a bunch of stuff. What do you have in the Sisters army so far?
Oh my gosh. Well,
or painted. Let's start with the painted stuff.
0.
Okay, nothing painted. Okay,
I'm purely in the assembly phase at this moment. And I got to tell you, the what is it? I'm flubbing the name right now, but the tank built on the Rhino chassis with the flamers.
Immolator.
The Immolator.
Yep.
As I just described it, there is what I thought it was going to be.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've assembled one of those kits.
Never assembled one of those kits.
Holy God. Those kits, Dave, those kits have so much detail and so many fine components. And I can assemble a Rhino, no joke, without the treads on it, 20 minutes. Not a problem.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm going to assemble this thing. Cool. Then I'll do the second one. It took me like 3 hours to assemble this thing.
Really?
It has so much detail on it and so many fine parts. There's literally where the person sits who's controlling the flamers, or melta-guns or whatever you want to put on there. The sister's sitting there, so you have to assemble the sister, obviously.
Yeah.
And you make the hands line up with the controls or whatever, but then even to the side of them, there's other little like gear shift levers that are just like the tiniest pieces you've ever. Have you ever assembled anything from Necromunda? Any of the one of the big complaints in Necromunda with the Goliath gang is there's one guy that comes with a cigar, and everybody always clips the cigar off the thing, and then it's gone.
Yes.
Where did it go?
Yeah.
So the trick to that is you keep it on the sprue.
Mm-hmm.
You use the guy's head. You put a dab on the cigar, and you put the guy's head on the cigar. Then you clip the cigar off.
Right.
These are pieces that are that tiny, and then I'm trying with my fat fingers trying to put the gear shift in there. I'm having to use like tweezers and all this stuff to get it lined up right. This is an intricate model, and it's gorgeous. I mean. And then not only that, then there's the stained glass, which is the clear plastic. So you don't want to put that on because you want to do that with, Tamiya, color inks or something. And it's like, I did not realize the complexity of the Immolator as I started assembling it. And I assembled one and I was like, I need a break from this. I think I'm just gonna assemble some sisters for a little bit, and that was where I was starting to like assemble sisters and assemble characters. And then I'm like, wait a minute, let's do a Crusade list. That way I'm not
Yeah.
just like, oh, I think I'll assemble this. And then I wind up with this disparate thing.
Yeah.
Let me get something I can get on the table quickly.
Right.
And then begin to play with. Now, a lot of my group is like, I don't play with unpainted models.
Okay.
I obviously play with a lot of painted models. I have commission painted a lot of stuff. I had stuff commission painted rather.
Yeah.
I have painted armies myself. But I am somebody who I'm fine with getting something out there that's not completely painted, as long as it's in the progress. Like I continue to make progress each time it hits the table and it's getting better looking and whatnot.
Yeah.
Some of my co-players may not agree with me on that one, but tough. You know?
I mean, you're just playing amongst yourselves, right? You're not recording it or anything, right? Yeah.
No. If I were recording or shooting something for the podcast or something like that, I'd use a fully painted army. But I come to think of it, I haven't played with a fully unpainted army in a very long time. But my sisters might be the first ones that I do that with, just to see like how it's such a different army than what I'm used to. I'm used to Space Marine armor, on my Chaos guys. I'm used to, demons and whatnot. So this plays very, very different than something I'm used to. So I'm not somebody that can read through a codex and say, oh, this is a good unit, I should use this, and this is and I see how these will work together. I have to get out there and get my face punched in a few times and go, oh, those don't work very well that way. I'm using these wrong. That's just how I learn.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree. Yeah. Learn through pain. You learn by dying.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So.
And on the using units and knowing what's good and not, for myself, I mean, I'm similar in that, like, I'm not able to look at a codex and be like, okay, these are the best and these are the best combinations optimized. Like, that's not how my brain works, right? I just think, man, that looks like it would be a lot of fun. So
I agree.
I'm going to bring that, whether it's good or not on the tabletop is secondary.
But take, for example, my Thousand Suns. Like, that was the approach I took with my Thousand Suns. I'm somebody who believes a Chaos Space Marine army has to have Chaos Space Marines in it.
Right.
Like, it's not a Chaos Cult army with a couple Space Marines. It's a Traitor Astartes army, right?
Yep.
So my first games with my Thousand Suns were, okay, I'm going to take this 10-man unit of Rubric Marines. I'm going to take this other 10-man unit of Rubric Marines. I'm going to do this, that, or the other thing. And I got pretty stomped pretty regularly until I realized I need something that can screen these guys. And maybe 10 of these guys is a bit much in one unit. That's an expensive unit. And what if I took it down to 5 guys in each unit, and then Zangors might be a good thing to absorb a little bit of this damage. So now when I play Thousand Suns, I do have a lot of actual Thousand Suns out there, if not Terminator Thousand Suns as well, right? Rubric Scarab Occult Terminators. But I throw in some units that can help absorb cheaply the punches that they're going to take.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's all very thematic. Like, every one of my lists is all very thematic.
With
and do I win everything? No, but I can punch you in the nose a lot before I go down.
Cast a couple powers. What do you for your Thousand Suns? Do you have a Demon Prince leading it, or a Sorcerer, Exalted Sorcerer?
In my 50 power level list, which was the one I just used in the game I just played, I do have a Demon Prince, and I do have a Sorcerer, an Exalted Sorcerer. And then what's typical for me is, it's a good thing I don't play tournaments, because it would be all kinds of drama. But what's typical for me is I rocked up to the table and I'm like, okay, so let's, put out things. And I'm like putting out my units, and my buddy Doug goes, you get all that for 50 power level? And I'm like, yeah. And I go, let me double check. So I go to my Excel sheet, where I've calculated, I have it all calculating out, and I look at the equation. I go, oh, I'm missing 2 lines here. So I'm at 70 power level, not 50. Well, let me pull some of these things out of this, but I'm glad he caught it before we started. It would have been number one, I think, first off, number one, I probably still would have lost, and then I'd feel really bad because I lost with even 20 more power, which tends to be the case. And number two, if I had won, I think he would have come away going, man, how come my army's terrible, and look at how much he has for this.
Right.
That's never a good situation. But I'm glad he caught it. I am famously known for accidentally having an extra Vindicator in my list that I didn't pay for in a game that I televised, like broadcast, and against Ed from Life After the Cover Save, and I still lost.
Ed?
Yeah, I still lost the game. Like, don't. I still lost the game, and it wasn't until my next opponent, like a couple weeks later, and they're like, "Wow, I think you've got too many points on it." And let's check. And I looked, and I'm like, "Oh my god." As I was building the list, I was taking things out, putting things in, taking things out, and I accidentally left in something that I didn't calculate, which was a Vindicator. And so I pulled it out, and I go, "Oh my god, this means that playing against Ed, I totally had an extra Vindicator, and I still lost." I'm like, "Oh man," So anyway, like, that kind of became a running joke on the show for a while. This was several years ago. That kind of became a running joke to the point where, if you remember in 7th edition, they had formations and all these things. And one of the things about Marines was they could get certain vehicles free. Like, if you do all this, you get a free Rhino.
Yes.
Or you do this, you get free drop pods. Or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Space Wolves. Yeah.
So Adam Loopy from Masters of the Forge, he created a fictional formation called I don't remember if it was called the something Tuttle, because I always used to joke how with Aaron Dinsky Bowden that he should write me into one of his books, and I would just be Space Marine named Carlos Tuttlecus. And he goes, "That's the worst name I've ever heard." I go, okay. I go, "I can die, that's fine." So
I can die.
So he had written this like Tuttlecus formation. It was like the I can't remember what he titled it, but it was just a joke, and it was like, "Oh, you get these free Vindicators if you take this formation." And it got out, like, the thing spread around the internet, and then we'd see it on Reddit, and people would be like, "This is baloney that GW's doing this, and they shouldn't be, oh, this is so broken," and we're like, "It's a joke, guys." But it looked really real. Like, he had done a really good job on it.
Yeah.
So, it's pretty funny. That's good stuff.
Did he make the how in the formation there's a little bit of a narrative and then there's the rules for the formation?
Oh yeah, he wrote the whole thing.
Oh wow.
Wrote the whole thing. So that had made its kind of way around for a while. But so I'm famously known for accidentally. Look, if you're playing me, double check my list. I'm just gonna tell you right now. Just please double check my list. It's not intentional. I'm just, math is hard.
I'm looking at some of the comments, and they're saying, "Now I am ADB books. I'll be looking for Tuttlecus."
You'll never find it. You'll never find it. He shut me down on that one real fast. Real fast. Like he said, that's the dumbest name I've ever heard. Like, I think those were actually his words. I was like, "Yeah, well, maybe."
Oh,
I have friends that have been named in books, though.
Yeah.
There are other previous Games Workshop employees that I know. In particular, one of my friends, Ed. His actual full name is Edwin, like Eadwine. And if you look in Dan Abnett's latest Gaunt's Ghosts stuff, there is a Space Marine in there that is named, I think, Sergeant Edwin, and that's named after him. So
cool. Like with the spelling and everything.
Yeah. Now you get away with it when you have an English name like that. I don't think you get away with it with adding Icus to anybody's name.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna switch gears here for a sec. We're gonna do Chaos Comment Bomb.
Okay.
So, for those of us who are tuning in right now who are not sure what this is what this is. I'm going to post a link to a YouTube video in the chat, and that'll bring you to a YouTuber. Here, let me see. I got it right
One
here.
of my favorites.
So we got this beforehand. It was Carl's suggestion that we that we do this. I'm just going to post it here. I'll post it a few times so it's unquestionable. All right, so this will bring you to Goobertown's video.
Yeah.
His latest one, his Painting Roulette Grand Finale, Q3 2020. That was posted just a few days ago.
He's incredibly talented and
Absolutely.
just an all-around great guy. And I love his videos. I love the stuff he does. Yeah, just a super nice guy. And really, the more attention you can give that guy, the better. He really does help out a lot of people.
Agreed. 100% agree. And for the Chaos Comic Bomb, just leave a comment on his video. Could be something like, Dave and Carl say hi from the Shrine of Chaos. Or it could be...
Chaos Bomb.
Chaos Bomb. Whatever it is, maybe ask him a scientific question, and then he can answer it.
There you go.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I had this thought the other day, and I asked him. It was a scientific question. It was because I saw his tutorial on this guy who made this cool orc terrain, and he used bark. He found bark on the street, right? And then he dehydrated it, sanitized it, and then he used it. And I'm like, I mean, that's interesting. Is it necessary though? Even though he did it, right? So I asked Goobertown, and so he gets back to me. He's like, well, I mean, it doesn't hurt to do it. Is it necessary? That's questionable. What are you afraid of?
Yeah.
What are you afraid it's going to do for you? Or to do to you, right? And so that was basically what he said, right? He's like, do it if you want to, but at the end of the day, if you don't, it's probably not going to hurt you.
Right. I do remember the guys that used to run, there was an old podcast called Dice Like Thunder back in the day, and then they changed their podcast name to, I don't remember what they changed it to. But at one point, one of them was trying to build like a Tyranid Biotitan using like crab shells and things, like actual crustacean stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, how are you going to seal that so that doesn't smell like awful?
Oh my goodness.
And I think he abandoned the idea shortly after starting it. But I applaud I mean, I'll bet you there is a way.
There's got to be a way, right?
To glaze that or something, and then you could somehow do something with it. There has to be.
Like, what if you just put it in a bucket of bleach? Like, would that not work?
I don't know. I mean, it's got to be something like taxidermy tools or something, or a resin layer you put over it or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I love the idea.
No, the idea is cool for sure.
Yeah, it's just I don't know how you get past the smell.
Yeah.
That would.
Yeah.
I'm putting my Biotitan on the table. You win. I'm out.
Oh, the smell got me. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like the Chuck Norris, like, okay, you put him on the table, he wins every battle.
So your channel and everything seems to be doing quite well. You still enjoying it and having a good time?
With just like making videos and bat reps?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could think of worse jobs.
I can think of worse jobs too. Yes. But no, to answer your question, it's great. It's fantastic. I mean, I recognize I'm fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every day I'm grateful for the support from viewers.
How is the studio and gameplay facility you've built? How is it doing kind of in this area of kind of tightened, stay at home, be careful kind of thing? How are you guys doing? Are you still having people come in, or is it shut down for the time being? Or
well, it's actually because it's classified as a hotel, people can still come in.
Oh, right.
And people have come in since, but they are separate from us. Like they are in the gaming hall just by themselves. Everything is spaced and everything, and hand sanitization, pump stations and whatnot. And so they keep to themselves. And so that is still happening a little bit. But we're mostly just, for now, focusing on content because of that, right?
Yeah.
And so
I think that's safe. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what it's always been anyway. And it just makes sense for the time.
Kind of gets you back to your roots a little bit too, right?
Yeah. Like
not that you've ever deviated too far from that mission. Like you guys have been kind of on that same track the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Like it's, if anything, it's kind of forced us to kind of reevaluate everything about what we're doing, because
Sure.
even like the efficiencies and where our time is spent and what we're focusing on and stuff that we're creating and the impact that it's having and the interaction that people are having with it. And so it's because of the downtime that we had, which was 2 to 3 months about that. We were, everyone worked from home. Everyone still worked. They just worked from home.
Yeah.
And it was, we experimented with remote battle reports. And so we were doing that for a bit and reaching out to other channels and collaborating with them. And in fact, that was kind of like probably around the time that I started to really do interviews with the Shrine of Chaos. I think you were one of the first. There was just a few months ago that I started that.
Yeah.
And people seem to like the new format, right? Where it's very much inspired by Joe Rogan, because he's got a different guest on all the time, and it's a long form. We're just kind of talking about stuff that we like in the hobby, and getting different channels, different personalities on, and getting painters and authors and players and competitive players and narrative players and podcasters, kind of like the whole gamut of the people in the industry. I found it really fascinating, just because it's all the same hobby. There's different facets of the hobby, and people approach it differently, and people have varying degrees which they participate in the hobby.
Sure.
And
they have different things they enjoy out of it, right?
Yeah. Like some painters that never play, right? Yeah. Or players that barely paint, or guys who are just into the hobby, or the lore, rather. They're just like, that's all they're into, and they love it.
It's crazy how, I think about this constantly. It is crazy how deep that hole goes with this hobby in particular. We can have conversations about the lore that will last, hundreds of hours.
Yes.
And debate certain things about that. And that's just the lore component of it. I mean, when you think about the volume of books they put out, Black Library now, I used to be able to keep up with all of it. I'm a fast reader. I could jam through it all. There is no way. There's just no way I can keep up with all that. Yeah, it's too much. Not too much in a bad sense. It's just too much to keep up with on an individual basis.
Yeah.
It was funny. I saw it was on Reddit or something, and it was like a kind of a meme, but it was like a chat back and forth between somebody, and it was on a phone, and it was well, tell me about the Primarchs and why they fell to chaos, and the guy's like, oh, okay. And then it's a how you can do like a audio clip and record something, and then somebody can just hear what you say.
Yep.
It was like a 9-hour audio clip.
Wow.
There's like the little timer. It says 9 hours, and it's like, oh, hang on a minute, and then 9 hours later.
Awesome. An hour each, right?
Because it's just so deep. Like you can just go so far in any of what we call the pillars of the hobby, right? The modeling, the painting, the collecting, the playing, and the the lore. I mean, and all of it ties together so well. It truly is an incredible and unique brand that has a strength that you don't see in a lot of other brands.
Right.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think the other thing that's interesting about it is just how much and I don't want this to sound negative, but like how much criticism it comes under. It's like we we joke here that nobody hates 40K like the people who love 40K. And recently there was a whole thing about Cyberpunk 2077 getting delayed till December. It's a video game getting delayed till December, and I've already pre-ordered the game. I'm super excited about it. I used to play Cyberpunk 2020, the role-playing game, and all this stuff. It got delayed, and then they got like death threats because they delayed the game, and the vitriol was so high. And I was kind of chuckling about it. We were in our own little private group, kind of talking about it. And I have friends who are video game developers. They were like, "Yeah, this happens all the time," and I'm like, why? Why don't you like this stuff? Like, yes, things can not go your way and you get frustrated from time to time, but when you think about how intricate this whole thing is they've built, it's pretty impressive, man.
Absolutely.
It's stunningly impressive.
And it keeps
you employed effectively.
Yes.
It keeps
Yep.
me doing a show for 10 plus years, and we have more to go. And it's just like, wow, it just keeps evolving. It blows my mind every time I think about it.
So the things that I love, just to kind of like add on to what you're saying there is, talking about first the facets of where you can go, right? Like I was talking to Cullen, he's our video editor, the other
Uh-huh.
day about it, right? And we're talking about terrain channels, and the terrain channels, and then painting channels, and then competition within that YouTuber sphere,
Yeah.
and how it is competition, yet it's not, because what if one only makes dioramas, whereas the other one only focuses on barricades, whereas one only focuses on painting high quality stuff, whereas one is like horde painting, and
Yeah.
there's so many different facets, and
And I don't know anybody who's so loyal to a YouTube channel that they only watch that YouTube
right,
channel.
I don't know if that exists, honestly. Yeah,
Yeah, I
people
mean, of
channel
course
hop.
not. Hey, I want to build a hill with a ruin on it. Oh, this guy's got a tutorial for how to build a ruin. Okay, cool. Oh, this guy's got tutorials for how to build hills. Okay. Oh, this guy has something that does both of them. Oh, that looks really complicated the way he did that. Maybe I like this piece of it. Like everybody kind of pulls pieces together. When I painted my Ultramarines army, I looked at a dozen different YouTubers on how they painted Ultramarines, and I took some from one thing and some from another thing and pieced together my own thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. So nobody's that loyal that like, and that's the thing with podcasting too. It's like there used to be like a lot of kind of infighting among podcasters, like in the younger days. I don't think it's so much now.
right.
Um, and it was just like, guys, there's this audience for all of us. Like
Yep.
I'm not competing against any of you. At the beginning of the show, you said, "Oh, one of the largest." I don't know if that's true anymore. I don't. We haven't put out an episode in a month because we've just been unable to line up work schedules and all that thing. And
Right.
and finally this Saturday we've scheduled. Okay, finally we're going to get to record. And I'm like, I wonder if we can do two. There's no way, but um, it is what it is. And real life rears its head, and none of this. Well, I would say none of us, except you, are in this for our main business. Except you, obviously. I'm not.
When you say
So
none
I'm
of
not.
us, do you mean none of the independent characters? Is that what you mean?
No, none of the independent characters are, and certainly, I know very few podcasters who this is their livelihood,
Right.
right? Or YouTubers who this is their livelihood.
There's a fair amount.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Now. Yeah. For sure. Now there are. And
yeah.
have been for a few years.
But the interesting thing is, I think, and it's the same thing in the comedy world. Like comedians get very competitive with each other, and if somebody does well, all of a sudden they're like, "How come he's doing well and I'm not?" It doesn't matter. Like the audience is there, and if you're putting out the content that the audience wants to see, they'll come see it.
And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
just it.
And it's not like I'm happy to help out anybody we can. I tend to not like when new podcasts come to us and they're like, "Oh, we have this new podcast, and can you advertise?" I'm like, "Well, how about you get a few episodes under your belt and then we'll talk." Because podcasts come and go pretty quickly.
Right. Yeah.
As it's a lot of work. But yeah, I don't know how I got on this tangent, but it's interesting that there really isn't any competition here. Like all of these people can it's a huge sea of material you can pull from. So
I think that like if there were, let's say there's two channels. In my case, let's say two bat rep channels. Right. There's my channel and then another one. Right. And it would be incredibly hard for us both to produce the exact same content.
Oh my God, how could you?
Right. Even if it was really the same, we are showcasing
even if it were the
game.
same two armies.
Even the same two armies. You're right. Right. Like it would be very hard. But let's say it was similar. Yeah. Even still, right. That was similar. I think those two channels would best serve each other if they actually did a crossover.
For sure.
Yeah, they would bolster each other's audiences, and
for sure.
And then
and maybe great. Open the door to new experiences, right? Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's interesting because there's inspiration kind of everywhere. You were just mentioning how you kind of looked at what Joe Rogan was doing, and you were like, "Oh, it's kind of this format." We do a show occasionally called the Warrior Lodge, where I pull in 3 or 4 people, and I have a list of topics that are maybe current in the community or something. And I'm like, let's talk about these topics in kind of a moderated forum environment. I become the moderator. I maybe give my opinion a little bit, but primarily I'm interested in what they're saying. Mm-hmm. And because it's new voices sometimes on the show, I'll be like, okay, great. Steve, what did you have to say? So that like people know that's Steve talking now. Yeah. And that whole format, I was cruising home one day, and usually if you get too many people on a podcast, it's very cumbersome. Like the people talk over each other and such.
Yeah.
But I was driving into work one day and I was listening to like NPR, and they have a show called Forum where it's just a moderated discussion about a topic, and they have, 2 or 3 guests on. And I was like, why couldn't you do that in a podcast format? Well, you absolutely can. Absolutely. And so I literally lifted that format and I was like, let's apply a 40K lens to this and see how it goes.
Yeah.
It's very popular.
Yeah. And how long have you been doing that now?
Oh, years. Like probably 6 years.
Okay. Yeah. And that's
it's just certain episodes we do. And sometimes we have a Patreon. One of the things I'll do, I've done once, but I want to do again, is I go to our Discord channel, which is only available to Patreon subscribers, and I'll say, hey, who's interested in participating in a Warrior Lodge episode? And I pull in 3 basically listeners of our show to talk about their thoughts on these things, and usually it's kind of a follow-up to topics we covered on the show, so that our listeners have a voice in what we're saying as well.
Right.
Which really goes towards our main objective of the show, which was make you feel like a part of our gaming group.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I mean, you've definitely done that, which is great. I mean, I felt it too when I listened to it might have been one of those episodes, because I remember there was multiple people on the episode.
Yeah, it's pretty fun to do, and it's pretty fun to hear other people's opinions on it, even when I don't necessarily agree with those. And in fact, it's better if actually I don't, or those people have different opinions. One of the problems I have sometimes is coming up with topics that my gaming group isn't going to just be like, yeah, we're all on board with that, Carl. All right, next topic. How do we feel about cheating in 40K? It's bad. Yeah, it's bad. Okay, next topic. You have to have something that has a little substance and I don't want to say drama, but that maybe I only want to play with painted models. Well, I think it's okay if we do this. Well, I don't agree. It's all opinion. So what does it really matter?
Yeah, I mean that's the fun of it though, is that discussion. So just one last thought here before we wrap up, and I want to get your thoughts on this because of how you like to play and how involved you are with the community. Do you ever, when it comes to the lore, mm-hmm. because of how rich the lore is, do you ever feel like the characters are larger than life, in the sense that, like, we talk about them almost like they're real people? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Yeah, I absolutely know what you mean.
Yeah.
The way you talk about Karn, or the way I talk about Armin, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like you go to the gym and you're working out, and then you make a selfie post and they're like, oh, okay, you're building your Karn arm, and stuff like that, right? Like, it becomes so ingrained and so a part of us that it becomes cultural, and it's like it kind of infuses with our thoughts. Yeah. Like we become war gamers in that it's a way of life.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have one friend that no matter what I may post on Facebook, he always ties it back to me and 40K. And I'm like, I'm so much more than just Warhammer 40K. Like, I have a lot going on in my life, right? I have a lot of... this is probably my main hobby, but I have other things I like to do, and then I have family, and I have a house, and I have a car, I mean, like, there's life. And so I'm always like, is this guy thinks like that's all I am is 40K? Because like it'll be like a thread and all my family's responding, and he's like, yeah, just like Armin, or something, and you're like, and I'm like, okay,
yeah.
So yeah, I do think it's a part of my vernacular, mm-hmm. right? Like a day does not go by that I do not probably talk or think about 40K at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Some days more than others, obviously, but yeah, it's definitely, and the characters themselves, I think it's actually a little bit of a detriment to the overall kind of story of 40K in my mind.
How so?
As much as I love Karn and I love Abaddon, and I love Ahriman, the galaxy is a massive, massive place.
Uh-huh.
I mean, bigger than we can really conceive of. And I think I talked about this last time too. And I think it was Graham McNeil had written a story, and this this guy was out by the edge of the galaxy, and there's kind of just like blackness beyond that. Like they were out in the very fringes of this. And it wasn't until that point that I was like, yeah, wow, the scale of this is so big.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, what impact does Ahriman have on the whole galaxy? Now, one could say, Abaddon or Abaddon, or however you want to say it, split the galaxy in half, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
People, it's so funny because people are always like, oh, he's a failure and blah. I don't know anybody else who's had a singular impact on the galaxy like this one character so far.
Yeah.
I mean, except maybe Horus kicking off the whole heresy, but he was tricked into it, whereas Abaddon worked at this. And yeah, some of it's been retconned so that it's, works out the way it is, but literally the galaxy is split in half because of his actions.
Yeah.
Right? And nobody else can claim that. So when you say, oh, he's failed because he hasn't gone to Terra yet, right?
Yet. That's right.
Yet. I think the thing that they do kind of poorly, in all honesty, and ADB and I have talked a little bit about this, because I think the Emperor Spears novel he wrote is a really good look at what's going on behind that veil, what's on the other side of the rent in the galaxy at this point, and it's not pretty. I mean, if 40K is post-apocalyptic, that's post-apocalyptic over on that side of the veil, and or the Cicatrix Maledictum.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the focus in just like the general 40K stuff is, look, there's new Primaris Marines, and there's new grab vehicles and this kind of thing. And a buddy kind of pointed out to me that towards the end of World War II, Germany was still doing a whole lot of inventing and development of war machines. And then that didn't work out so well for them at the end of World War II. So things are very bad in the Imperium right now, although it doesn't ever feel like that to me by the Codex writing.
Right.
Yeah, like it's worse than ever, but they're not emphasizing that enough, I don't think. And what impact does somebody like, Inquisitor Locke or Ahriman or Sergeant so-and-so of the Imperial Guard, what impact do they really have? Nothing. They're just kind of guys we kind of latch onto to kind of show us around what's going on.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
no.
I know I'm a little off topic there, but it's interesting. The characters, I think, take up a little too much of our thought and time here.
Yeah. No, that does make sense. Carl, thanks again for being on the show.
Dude, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I love you guys. So as soon as I can make it out there, we'll make it out there. But it looks like it'll be a while.
And for those of you who are tuning in or watching this after the fact, check out Carl on the independentcharacters.com. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also on Facebook, same thing.
Yep.
Go to the website or listen to it on.
All the links are from the independentcharacters.com. You can find it all from there.
Yeah, you'll find it all there. Awesome.
And thanks.
And we'll see you next time. And thank you guys for tuning in. Stay tuned next week, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, for the Shrine of Chaos.